So the Union expects this to be fairly heavily defended. I'm sending a second corps across to Ford. Oh, I haven't done anything here. What I want to do there is I want to entrench so I can pull these guys back and give up the outer edge of the Bermuda 100. I can just swap trenches. So that, you know, I'm in a defensive position as I start filtering my troops out. Otherwise, I don't have, you know, I leave a couple units exposed to Beauregard, which is not what I want to do. Now Beauregard has to make a decision as to whether to, I mean, he can't just open up the gates, but as to whether to attack the newly entrenched position or let the Union slip away. Okay, but I'm attacking in two different positions actually here. One here because, you know, I've got some units that are holding the location, so I might be able to push through, assuming that the troop density isn't met. The troop density is kind of low in this game. It's only 15 for Claire. But I'm also hitting here because I think that this is probably stronger defended than any other place on the river, and I was able to get 2 corps into that space. Something that, you know, maybe he wasn't watching for. This was just normal fords or whatever. And it's hard to tell because this is written as a ford. It doesn't really look like a bridge, but it's got a road across it, but it doesn't have one of these little crossing things on it. I don't know what it's supposed to be. You know, maybe it's not supposed to be crossable. Again, the maps and handling of this game, its system as a whole, are really problematic. But I'm just going to go with what my best guess is. We also have my cav skirting around the edge. So the Confederacy's days are numbered in terms of holding, what is this? I don't know what this is. This is the unreadable. It's a big one, but I don't know my rivers here in this command. I don't know. First here at White House, and this is the interesting thing. You can lose these campaigns in one of these little battles. You know, it doesn't look like they do a lot of damage usually, but I may be on the verge of losing one here because I'm crossing the river. Not because I want to drive the other guy out, but because of the entrenchments, and I'm crossing the river. Of course, I'm not in defensible terrain. That's helpful. I have chosen to assault with the Union. And of course, the rebels are standing. And yes, I'm facing something pretty potent there. Anderson, he's got some cav with him to get him over the strength points. We'll do the fording guys first. Amazingly, the 5th Corps is fucking huge. So that's 14, 22, 30, 40, which means I'll be up on a pretty good column even after being halved. So yeah, so we're looking at 20 there to, assuming 5th Corps is all alive, it is. I had checked that. And 1st Corps is fine as well, which means we can, I don't know about those cav though. 18 and the 2 Lees are fine, so that puts them to 20 as well. We thought we might have 2 to 1. Instead, we've got 1 to 1. There's no special terrain, no river swamps or anything like that, I'm pretty sure. Here, I'm not so sure on these. We could look at the images and try to see if there's anything that expresses It's definitely not swamp. River swamp. Sounds like it's a swamp next to a river. I'm not seeing swampiness here. And gully swamps are these things. So, yeah, I mean, it's really hard to discern terrain in this game. That's all you got to go with. So we're 1-to-1. There aren't going to be any mods. The big one is the dividing by 2. And we took this up to a 3. And this is where it was a bonus by going, if we had just gone with an advance, we would be taking a hit. But here we're taking a hit and we're giving a hit, which is good. Of course, the Confederate hit eats the entrenchment. But now that gets us down to the fire results. It's an assault for the Union, a stand for the Confederates. The Confederates get a bonus though, so we're both on that same table. And we may cause some damage. And we each take 1 hit, and I threw away the Union die because I got my dice over here. So the Union has taken 2, the Rebels 1. I gotta come back. Smith is also assaulting. And I can get rid of these, those have been recorded. But he's got a smaller unit. He's not halved, however, so he's at 14, 15, 16. We're not at 20 anymore, we're at 19. But that puts us to 1-to-2. The assault says the Union takes 2 hits, and the Confederates have already taken their entrenchment for this round. So they're not protected. So in a sense, it's okay that I'm taking heavier losses, I guess. And, excuse me. Now we go to the fire combat, but the Confederates don't get a die this time. And what were we at? 14, 15, 16 on an assault. It's going to be this column. And I think there's nothing to modify this. That's going to be another hit on the Confederates, so it's 2 each for that. Let me just make sure that there isn't a shift for having, I'm always checking this, for having the flanking attack. It's only flanking defense that gets you a bonus, if I recall correctly. Yeah, it's a penalty if you can't match all the defensive positions, you get a penalty, which means I guess the defending line is more supported and laid down than it would be. One round only of combat, we did a total of like 3 hits on the Rebels. They still have, I don't know, they took 3, so 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 strength points. They are not driven off at all. Well, first of all, they're not driven off. The 19 strength points means the Union's not going to be able to bust through them. So Smith will be sticking around here. Weakened and not entrenched. I could have entrenched him. Couldn't I? No, they just showed up this turn. No, they showed up last turn. Yeah, I could entrench him. Let me entrench him just for good luck, because since I now have unlimited entrenchment counters. Now the problem for Warren is that his forces can't stay, and like with I don't remember who it was, 6th Corps, right, he's going to have to take straggle effects, which weakens me, and I probably can't launch another attack until I recover from those at least. Although I could just keep pressing, each turn. But yeah, I have to fall back across the river and take the straggle effects for that. And there's a heavy price to not being able to cross the river, and I don't know how to cope with that particularly. To these rules, I had remembered that artillery couldn't, you didn't want to straggle artillery, and they straggle when you leave them in battle, obviously. So we lost an artillery here, we lost an artillery in the last battle. But I had said that, hey, you know, those were permanent losses. Well, it's kind of interesting because these fucking rolls, let me see how they're expressed. The only place it's really mentioned is in the straggler rolls, which makes sense. But stragglers affect artillery. They're marked in the same way, supposedly, but somewhere else there's a rule you can't recover artillery stragglers. I find that kind of, you know, a horrible way to record things, because now I've got circles that I think I can recover, so I might try to recover them accidentally. So, I mean, it would have been better if they just stated right up front, artillery straggle and it can't be recovered, in the section that says that, instead of saving it for only the section where, you know, it's absolutely necessary when you're checking for the recoveries. This is the kind of philosophy to the rules that, yeah, you might need to put a few more words in. It might cost you another page or two, but it can add to the clarity a great deal to, you know, specify a few things like that so that you don't make those kind of errors. And in fact, what it might just say is, instead of saying artillery don't straggle or don't recover their straggles, where it actually tells you that you straggle, which is not even here. The straggle rules for combat are kind of implied over in the combat section, but if it tells you about, you know, wherever, that should be here as well. Wherever it tells you about that, you know, the straggling from combat, it should call out artillery are affected by this as well. So somewhere it does say that it may. Leaders in artillery never suffer straggle when force marching, but artillery lose stragglers due to other causes. And this would be the moment where you say, but those are permanent, or those should be marked as losses or whatever. Anyway, enough. But I mean, it's that kind of shit that causes it, that makes it harder, even coming back to the game, remembering that this was the case. It makes it harder to find the instance. So I had been thinking that artillery should be able to recover. Now, I didn't actually do it because I said to myself, that's fucking ridiculous. Mistaken, actually. I had recovered the straggle because I couldn't find the rule that said that they don't recover on first glance. You know, again, it irritates me. Okay, so the Union troops will show up down there, and then I'll take the other battle on. Important which area you came in from. I'm marking the 2nd Corps with a die, and, well, this is the 9th, so I don't have a 10-sider kicking around close by. The one that was on the floor, I finally cleaned up. What a shame. You always ought to leave things around. They might come in handy just being there. This is going to be a little if here. I've got the 2nd Corps, and they're assaulting again. Burnside has a smaller force because one of his divisions is left behind, and he's also maybe not that big. He was within range of Grant to be able to launch this attack. On the other hand, we're facing a smaller Confederate force, but we don't have the advantage of being able to just push by them. They've got the river cordon, which means if we don't break them, which isn't going to happen, we're repulsed. Okay, let's take a look at the 2nd Corps. Base is 15, 29, 39. I could have put the artillery on the other side. 39, which means we got a big 19 and a half, whatever that means. It's all there. versus, let's get rid of these dummies. Shit. Dies. What do we got there? Heath. Gotta be. Oh, he's on a core. Good. Okay. So that's 9, and 3 threes is 9, 18. So we're only getting 1-to-1 on him. Wow, this is not good. This is the assault versus. So we flip that in exchange for 1 hit. And now we're both going to be on the, let me make sure that what, shit. Burnside is crossing yucky terrain, it looks like, which I did not take into account. Not absolutely certain of that. We can look at the picture. That fucking doesn't help. River swamp, I'm assuming that is hard to see. I'm gonna have to see what that has as an effect. I was not counting on that. Okay, but we'll take care of this because I wanted the surprise effect of being able to hit twice. So the Union assault is over here. The Confederate stand is here. The Union gets a bonus for leadership. So it's going to be 21-15 table. The Union does 2 hits to the rebels. And the rebels do 1 to the Union. So that's 2 on each. 2 is still not enough to force a leader loss check. I just am really upset by this. I'm making an assault across the river. You really have to get hammered in order to have a chance of losing a leader. And the more forces that are involved on both sides, the more likely that the leader will get hurt, which again doesn't really feel like it reflects anything real. I don't know what does, but it feels like there should be a small chance, and it really shouldn't be impacted by how big the engagement is, because it's small situations that sometimes get the leaders killed. I was fighting on this map the last time for the main game. I avoided going across these river swamps, and I'm seeing a discontinuity here. They're not terrain areas. They run between areas separated by major rivers along the river. If the attacker crossed the river swamp this turn, then during the combat round, the attacker has his strength halved as normal, and he suffers an odds column shift to the left. Yeah, that's going to suck. His artillery can't be in the line. I'm not even bringing artillery if that's the case, because that's just asking to lose them. So I'll leave them behind. Okay. And they should have both ford and swamp crossing markers. During combat round on subsequent turns, the attacking units are again halved in strength. However, for the original units that attacked the previous turn, there's no CIC column shift to the left. Okay. So the swamp crossing, I guess, gets... I don't stay in... What I was seeing this as was, if I stay in the same space, I didn't just cross a major river. I got flung back. I think I'm allowed to keep crossing the swamp without getting the column shift penalty, and I can bring artillery with me. Except a superior officer allows the attacker to remain on the defender's side as per the normal river crossing. That's what I forgot. Okay. I did not have an advantaged leader here. Hancock is going to be able to stay on board. Burnside obviously is not. But yeah, so I'm going to get a foothold here because I brought a decent leader with me. I forgot all about that. Remember how, if you were watching Mississippi Fortress, how Grant was able to basically just punch his way through the lines because we didn't have the rule for I don't know, whatever it is, the troop density rule. That wasn't in the game yet. I didn't have that available to me to consider, and it just created a really weird situation where he was just able to push through everything and was basically unstoppable as long as he's willing to take losses, which feels very Grant-like, but obviously wouldn't work for the rest of the game, you know, for any system. Plus, in this situation, Grant was unable to find his way around the river, you know, through the Confederate positions on the river lines. He had to keep going around, which is more the style of this system. But by being able to wedge myself in, and this is going to be too small a force, I will be able to leave this space, which is powerful, and I'll also be placed there and creating a disruption in the Confederate line. So that's all good. Cool. Did I record all my losses? I think so. I hope so. I did, so I can move these. And now we'll be taking care of Burnside, which is not a happy camper here. He also is assaulting. He has 17, which puts him to 8.5. He's not at 18 anymore, he's at 16. And yeah, I mean, I'm forgetting things in the system at this point. 8.5 to 16 means I'm going to be 1 to 2 base. I shift over. I went up to CIC 3. Burnside, we might lose Burnside here. Burnside takes 2 hits. However, he gets to shoot back. No, we won't lose him because I already fired there. Why did I do it? I don't know. So now Burnside is at 8.5 on an assault with no bonuses. And he causes an additional loss to the Confederates here, which would be counted. This is how you can accumulate enough losses, by being outflanked. The first key question is Heath has taken 3 hits. He has more than 4 for his integrity, so he doesn't have to flee the battle or anything like that, which means he's going to still be here, though less than happy. Burnside has to withdraw. We'll take care of that in a moment. Hancock's divisions, and yeah, I probably have an extra unit here because of his superior leadership. Hancock is in place and gets to keep a combat marker. I'm not going to worry about the combat marker for Burnside because the Confederates aren't going to be back here. But Burnside has to leave and take straggle effect, so his corps is going to be pretty badly hosed by this. But we've gotten a foothold here and here. The Confederate position is looking more and more questionable. You know, can I withdraw some of this stuff off here? Is that real? Whatever. Well, if it's entrenched, it's real. It doesn't look like this is terribly threatened. But, you know, an outflank, even an appearance of one, is just so dangerous. I may have to give up my line here if I can't get enough forces to prevent Hancock from just marching out of there. Because if he can just march out of there, then he can hit weak spots to the flanks of that without any problem. He can't just go marching down, I don't think. Although, well, he's in supply, so he actually could. So he could start marching towards Richmond for what that matters. Because again, the supply line is being traced way down here. Confederates can't cordon that all off. They can't hold the whole line. Look at the victory conditions. Probably a wise choice. At an earlier time. I've made a decision that I didn't really know that I was making. There's a 10-point penalty to the Union if they're not south of the James at the end of the game. However, getting adjacent to Richmond is worth 1 victory point per turn. Conquering Richmond is worth 20 per turn. So And I'm not sure why these are on the board on this one. It says to set them up, but they have absolutely no effect. So getting the Army of the James all on the other side seems like a viable solution. I can always move units back across the James towards the end of the game if things don't look good. That could be, down here where things just don't matter. So don't worry too much about the fact that I'm giving up the Bermuda 100. Something else can be established. But I have to remember that. But why this is such an important turn in general, this is the point where the Confederates have to make, this and every following turn along this river line, you have to make the decision of, do I want to give up that river line? Is it the time yet? I had thought I would be holding the Union off a little better than I did. I thought this was going to be my situation. This looks a lot more troubling. Yes, I trashed Burnside doing it, and maybe only Hancock should have gone in, but that situation is very disturbing. So we may be leaving the line. All right, moving forward with Beauregard and trying to hold the line down here. We'll see what happens. I've got enough forces in here that this can't just push through. There's enough forces in here that this can't just push through. That buys me a little bit more time to break some more bridges. Breaking those bridges is a big deal because it means the Union has to go through more work to cross over here. And the further over I can get breaking bridges, the better it is. Of course, falling back isn't going to be, it's not immediately from one river to the next. With the Union piling right up against me. So there's a little bit of time for withdrawal as well. I might be able to get most of these bridges burned. My biggest worry right now is actually this cav here. I'm sending some Confederate cav over to try to cope with that, but that's not terribly hopeful to me. And that is it for this turn, and I am going to have to work late today because this turn took a lot longer than I thought it would. The after effects of this COVID shit are just so weird. I was feeling pretty well for a couple of weeks, so I cut back off my vitamin D because, among other things, but that seems to be what caused this horrible relapse. So now I'm back on it, and for the first day in like 3 or 4 days, I feel pretty damn well, actually. Not 100% ever, but my legs aren't numb anymore. The fog is largely gone. So, all I have to say is I think I'm stuck on this shit for the rest of my life. Who knows? But anyway, for the Union, faced with tricky situation again. The Confederates loaded up in these two areas. I can't move out of those areas. I can't press through them. I could withdraw from them because I've got the combat markers. So that leaves me with the question of how I go forward. Now I'm pushing forces over here. That's going to threaten behind the lines if Gilmore, I believe, is down there. If his entire force is pushing, up northward, that kind of puts a time limit on how long the Confederates can hold the line that they're holding versus falling back. And I think that timer has just started and is looking kind of ugly. The one exception to that is if Beauregard can crack part of the Union Corps. I don't know if that's going to happen. Also, Union cav skirting around the side, again, degrading the position. I don't think the Confederates can hold where they are. The question is, does the Union want to try to force them on their way? Because it looks obvious, the fact that I can't move out of here, the Confederates must have weakened one of their positions. Kent's 6th Corps maybe bust through over here where there's a normal crossing. They don't want to do it here, even if they had the pontoon bridge there, which I don't think they do. That's the only really unallocated thing I have. I have Warren's 5th Corps sitting over here. which I kind of don't want to shoot through here because that didn't work very well. Maybe Burnside and Warren together can cross here, but man, crossing through the swamp was not pleasant. On the other hand, Burnside already has a swamp crossing advantage, so he'd just be doing major river crossing if he wants to go help Hancock, but we'll see. All the informational markers, and there are a number of them that kind of give you clues about what the other person's up to, like forced marches. Maybe you could see that, you know, maybe the hurried movement ends up, I mean, obviously dust on the road if you're that close, but that's going to happen no matter what. But maybe you can end up seeing the effects of moving so quickly in terms of spies and whatever being able to bring back information more easily. Straggler, ineffective unit. Maybe if there's clouds of enemy soldiers wandering around through the woods or whatever, if that's what it's meant to represent. But again, that takes a little bit of hand waving. But one that sure the hell I have no problem with is the entrenchments, because your scouts are going to be able, you know, if you have any scouting capability whatsoever, they're going to be able to see an improved defensive position of any significant size. Yes, maybe some small unit could dig in the woods and you wouldn't notice it, but for the most part, I think you would not stumble onto an entrenched position and be surprised. The point behind that is, if you want to keep your army mobile enough to be confusing, you don't entrench. Because now I don't know whether these are real units or dummies, because forces could be shifting back and forth and whatever. Wright's 6th Corps is going to make a probe over into here, see what happens. That's going to be a river crossing. Otherwise, we're pretty much relaxing this turn. I had to probably have these guys up against there just to remind me that they all have that, because he's got another division that would not have that and would be further damaged if it's involved in action. Thirsty SOB that I am, Wright is going to assault. It's the only way across these rivers in one round. We'll see. I have the leadership advantage, that'll help. That's one reason he went for it. Okay. Let's put him on the right spot there. So what do we have? Well, Wright's not in perfect shape. He has 17, 23, 35 base. -2 puts me to 33, which means I'm at 16 and a half. I think those are rounded up, but I don't remember. Versus Pickett, who's also not very strong. Pickett alone, he's full strength, which means it's going to be hard to get him out of there, but he's a 6. Which means even with the river crossing, I've got a 2-to-1 attack. So that puts me at 2-to-1. This is defensible terrain, though. So that shifts it down to 1-to-1. Combat intensity is 3. We each lose 1. And that'll be a hit on the Union. And now firepower, this is where it's ugly. This is an assault at 16 with a leader shift versus stand at 6 without. That's not good. That's 1-to-3 to the 1820. It's the only way I can remember which column I'm on. That's one more hit on the Confederates and not there, so we each take a hit. That's not going to be enough to force my way across, so I'm going to have to withdraw and take straggle losses. That was a pretty good result for Pickett to hold. I mean, it's kind of the expected result, but the straggles were bad. Warren is not, or Wright is not in good shape facing something of that size. So really, the pressure is only coming from the flanks and the rear, etc. I'm not really too worried about the Union being able to just push through the river line. However, I think I got to get my ass out of here. That's going to be a general retreat, so that I can get out of these spaces without having to attack first. That's a huge advantage in the rules. I really love the optional rules. I feel are absolutely necessary to make this game work, you know, and those weren't added until the second edition. So like the first edition that I think Mississippi Fortress I had a first edition copy of. Never again will I play with first edition rules without those extra options. And they're optional in the second edition, but they're absolutely necessary. One wonders how the system survived to make it, you know, not just a publication where you had, you know, these permeable lines that you just had to attack and then you could push through them long enough. I guess more mobile situations were used where you didn't have the troop density in existence that would prevent the pass-throughs anyway, perhaps, or something along that line. But man, the difference in terms of bypassing lines in this late war period, there's just no way. The game just does not make sense without those rules. And to the extent that, like, I kind of feel like, you know, those initial games in the series on the first edition rules, people might have looked and said, well, this is neat, but it just doesn't make sense. How they could have been published under that circumstance, and how they could have gained enough, you know, enough playing for people to say, you know, if you just changed this kind of thing, you know. That always kind of amazes me when something that was so broken, because it really clearly was, could have been seen as that someone could see, that enough people could see that, yeah, it still has promise. It just definitely needs this. And to get that patch in place and test it out in that with enough to, you know, emphasis to get it into the rules. The other thing is, why are they optional? At least in this scenario, there's like, yeah, you can't play this without them. But even, you know, even the lead takes command, there's just no way you can play it without these. You bust right through to Richmond, just like you busted right through to Vicksburg in the Mississippi Fortresses. Without nothing can stand in your way. You can just push through stuff. Fucked up royally with the Confederates, as I would expect I would do, trying to defend in this game. These Union Cav are in striking distance of Richmond with a forced march. I gotta look at the Richmond special rules to see if there's anything that helps me, but I got nothing that can cover it right now. I shouldn't have moved my damn garrison out, but, you know, it looked like it was doing something valuable, and I have fucked up royally. Running everything almost as hard as I can back towards Richmond. The one exception, I haven't decided what to do with Beauregard yet. I mean, he could run hard for Richmond. He's not going to make it in time either. But he could also launch an attack here, which I don't think is advantageous particularly. However, now if the Union keeps in force south of the James, that changes things a little bit. I'm not sure they want to. So I'm not sure standing here does me any good. And there's basically nothing tricky I can do with my dummy counters to help me here. I mean, I could leave one here. Why not? But I can't get dummies into Richmond or near it to make things look worse than they are. Really what just happened was I left a back door open. And that's a shitty situation. It's going to cost me like 20 victory points. And if I have to fight a possible out of supply battles, I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think the Union's going to be able to press as hard as all that. First of all, the units behind the river can't force march. And yeah, I'm just not, you can't, force marching into battle is stupid. So it's going to be really hard to kind of force them into a battle now that the Confederates made this initial force march away from the line. But yeah, I mean, Richmond's going to fall, and that's going to be the game right there. We can try to assess it without that 20 points after the failure to see how badly I did, and watch the rest of the game unfold. But yeah, this was one of those mistakes that can happen in this system. There's no question about it. Can it happen in other games? Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of games where like you make some stupid mistake and you get hosed. This happened to me in Lee versus Grant. The only time, or the first time I played it opposed. I think I played it opposed twice actually. The first time I played it opposed, I was playing Lee, and Grant got behind my supply line, and then I'm facing him, dropping back on each defensive position with Lee like trying to find supply somewhere or another, and just struggling horribly. And it was clear Richmond was going to fall, so I conceded that. This one, it's also clear, but it's going to fall to a couple fucking cav, which I can chase out of there, but I can't make up for the victory point losses that I'm going to take for it. Actually, the Confederacy is saved. I would have to march over this river to reach Richmond on a forced march. More than that, I can't be sure that's not a real unit and that's Jeff Davis there, which means I would have to charge into Richmond with my cav if that river was not here. I didn't notice there's a major river here. I can only go this far. I can't force march. If I force march here, get the same place at higher expenditure. I've moved the rest of my Union units. What's his name? Smith? Gilmore is moving here, launching an attack. It's a dummy. No biggie there. But yeah, the Confederates are repositioning themselves now. We've got to try to keep Union units away from Richmond, but we probably shouldn't have let them out of the bottleneck, to be honest. I don't know, because the Union could come around here. So by tempting them with the southern route and them following, I've prevented the Army of the James units from combining up as easily, but also from threatening my river line that is going to form. So I don't know which way was wisest. I'll leave it as it is. But I did just realize that yes, that Union cav cannot reach where I want it to. It can, however, reach down here without a problem. And there are problems with that. I think that causes a victory point for the Union. I'm going to have to start scoring points. I haven't been scoring them for casualties because what the hell, I can add that up at the end of the game, along with straggler losses. But yeah, we've got the Union chasing for the most part. They still have Grant to move. We want to get him moving kind of fast because Burnside is down there and has to be specially coaxed. Ugh. I just noticed something else in the victory conditions. Shit. Really should pay attention to these suckers. 10 victory points for sole possession of Arrowfield by any effective combat unit. That's a per turn? Yeah, that's per turn. That's this location here. Boy, I wasn't expecting that. Crap. I cannot let the Union Army out. So let me redo this, because I caught this one in time that I can fix it. I had a forced march there that I'm not making. Instead, I'm entrenching. Could I have forced marched one unit? I don't know. Let me... so here's the thing. Other units are getting close enough to Richmond that they can cover it. So I don't absolutely need to let the Army of the James out. So let me think about what the Army of the James is going to be up to. I probably don't want to fight my way through. So we are going to give up that southern section, I think. Fix that. The Union's pulling out. You're going to have to excuse me. My prior very optimistic assessments of my physical condition were not correct. I went out and did a very limited amount of exercise, basically sweeping my deck. And it sent my heart rate through the roof, and I went and laid down, and it's still pounding, and I'm not operating correctly at all. And that's the Rebel positioning there. Let me see if I can get it all in view. Making our way down, no longer forced marching, because second turn forced march, there's a penalty for that. The straggles roll. Now, I'm trying to pretend I don't know what temperature is going to be. The next few turns are going to be bad for forced marching as well. I might have risked it given that, but the penalty is the same. I'm leaving a unit entrenched here to keep convincing the Union, yeah, you're not coming that way, right? That should help a little bit. And got a couple interesting centers. I gave up Cold Harbor, but I'm here at Gaines Mill, which is a stronger defensive position. I believe that's rough. But I left this open, although there's units down here. So we'll see how things fit out. The Union can conceivably, well, they can't get out of here because the Confederate cav can intercept them and force a combat. I'm not sure, though, that Confederate cav did force march and may not be, it's in okay shape. So it should be able to hold out. And otherwise, yeah, and I'm not going to keep playing because I'm obviously not in good enough shape. I had to cheat some of early way down here that I had entrenched. I don't want to be sticking back here in easy range of being schwacked. No points for the Union because these aren't infantry units. It has to be infantry that's next to Richmond to get the single point even, so I don't have to bother about tracking victory points yet. Union continues to push down towards the Chickahominy. We have the Union cav trying to make it into Richmond and being blocked by the Confederates. That's going to be an attack by the Confederates against the Union in good terrain. The rebels know more or less what they're facing, so they're not happy about it. Doing a diversionary attack. The Union outnumbers them heavily and is standing. That would be 4-10, but let's just check. Confederates are fine. Union cav is fine. So it is actually 2-5. That's 1-3. Because they're halved for being cav. For whatever that matters. It means less fire damage. 1-3, and we've got diversionary is a 0. That puts me on 2. The Confederates take a hit for that. And now the other side of it is fire combat here. We said 2 with diversionary to 5 with stand. No leader involved. We were at what, 1-3, I said? It's not the 2 table. It's the 1 table. And it's actually at 1-4. So the results are fine, but because there's a shift against for the terrain type. Okay. The Confederates get a potential hit. It does not succeed. So the Confederates take 1 hit on one of their cav. Absolutely necessary attack, though, because Richmond is defended, by that cav screen. All right, on to the rebel side. And the Confederates are going to attack the Union here. The Union cav is going to fall back. It can do this as withdrawal before combat. And I can actually fall there. which causes more problems for the rebels. Big problems, actually. Ugh. I think I will not declare an attack instead. Because we don't want that happening. But yeah, that's the position we're in. We've moved into a second turn of heat weather there. And what am I like on top? Okay. It might seem like everything's going quite well for the Union right now, but there's a problem. Yes, this is the main bonus for the Union. We'll get to that in a moment. The problem is the Confederates are forming up behind the Chickahominy, and while there's a path this way that is kind of clear for the Union, that doesn't respect their supply line. Now, if I had my supply line still back here, I'd actually be in better shape. But by moving it here, and I think that's a requirement actually, I'm not positive. I'll have to look that up. If it's not, I should have just stayed back here because there's no problem with me being able to span my supply from everywhere, from back there to anywhere I want, following roads and rails. The game does not have supply limitations the way the Autumn of Glory map did. So here's the and maybe I'm missing something because the Union historically in the 7 days thing wanted to move their supply line down here, but there was a reason they wanted to get south of the river, so they didn't want the army split. The problem is, though, that this is kind of exposed. So I have to protect this, and there's a perfect line going back. So it's going to be hard to wheel the army in that direction, which means then what? It might mean that I have to shift downward and try to keep something here and try to roll the line up from that direction. And that's not trivial. The big advantage, though, is the Army of the James sitting back here. This is a real threat. And the Confederates aren't positioned to stop it, and it's just going to start rolling towards Richmond. And that might force the Confederate line to fall back onto Richmond and try, to come into a closer defensive line there. So what we're not going to see is kind of the Siege of Petersburg type thing going on here. We didn't see the Cold Harbor pain either happen. Union is going to try to move these guys, and of course they're going to get intercepted by the Confederate cav, and we're going to have a quick fight there. But otherwise, the Union, I can't even, yeah, I can. I'm cav, I can try to leave. Other than that, though, the Union has spread their way out so that it's not absolutely apparent where they're hitting and heading for. The one real danger is Gilmore coming up this way from the rear, and that's a threat that cannot be ignored. Also, looking at the victory points, looks like the likely place for a fight is over here. Of course, I could force march into here and not attack. I'm not sure with that swamp there. I'll have to look that thing up. But looking again at the victory points for this thing, the Union point is 1 victory point maximum, that's per turn, for effective infantry division adjacent to Richmond. That's going to start collecting up points pretty quickly if I'm fighting in here. So I think the Confederates have to kind of pull back. The problem is I don't want to give up this bridge. The Union can throw their supply source down here, and that's virtually untouchable if I start swinging the flank there. At that point, it's not going to restrict me at all, except for whatever's heading up this way. Is that dummies? Is it real stuff? I don't know. How much have I been paying attention? How much have you been paying attention? Hope I'm not making another butchery over here, but the Confederates are launching a diversionary attack because we really don't want this to be very heavy. And the Union, who has more cav, could stand and fight, but instead they chose to withdraw because that can get them into here, which is where they want it to be. You know, of course they want it to be able to move here and here, but that's not in the cards. But at least I put a threat into play. So Confederate cav is only 3 strength points. The Union cav is full at 10, 3 to 10. Sounds like really lousy. Down about here, we're on the 0 level. The Confederates take a hit. And now we're here. It's 3 to 10, those two charts. Neither one hits. The Union gets away, but they got to make straggle checks. Moving my rebels, heading back towards Richmond. I obviously have to cover Richmond from the cav. I got to worry about these, which is definitely a problem. But I also have the question of how much am I worried about bridges? I've blown all the bridges over here. Yes, the Union can trickle its way around that way, and that's fine and dandy if they want to spend a lot of time. There's not, you know, there's a fair amount of game, so we're going to get to a fight either way. But if I don't blow these bridges and I don't cover the river adequately, a good Union leader can pound his way through. And the Confederate leadership is not that good across the board. I've got Hill and Anderson here and here, and Ewell here. I could maybe cover these 3, but the most difficult place to blow the bridges is here, where I am sitting on 1, 2, 3 different bridges into that location. That means I have to leave 3 real units to destroy those bridges. That is painful. So I don't know. Rules on the Gully Swamp are a little weird. If the attacker, there's nothing in them that indicates you have to attack on crossing one, and they're not a major river, so I may be able to just march in and pin those Union units. However, there is a statement, note that the attacker does not require a superior rated officer to remain in an enemy occupied area after combat after crossing over a gully swamp, which kind of hints at maybe I have to, but without a specific rule saying I do, I think I can march through there, and it's not a big deal. Once you cross that swamp, after that first turn, you're not really in any penalty. It's not like the major river crossing where if you cross the swamp, you've still got the major river penalty if you cross it again. I'm mistaken, it's 4 bridges. I blew 3 of them. That's just to slow the Union down. Yes, an attack could be made across here or across there, but there's fair-sized looking, at least, Confederate forces in both cases. In this case, there definitely is, because I blew 3 bridges. This one, I only blew 1, and there were 2 there, so there's probably just 1 unit there, unless something shifted. Did the force march down there, not paying any price, don't have to fight. I'm launching an attack here. Now, the Union's got a problem. If they withdraw, I can't go into Richmond. I can ask if I can, but I won't be allowed. I can go here, but that's one of the few spaces on the board I'll actually be out of supply. So I am going to withdraw back. Yeah, this is the better piece of terrain in terms of the size of the terrain. It gives me more mobility. I was worried about this major river blocking me, but I got a way out this way anyway. I am going to withdraw and let the Confederates do what they like. So this somewhat stymies the Union. Obviously, there's a potential problem. Blowing those bridges doesn't do much if, you know, I want to build a corridor or a bridge, or if I want, if I have the pontoon bridges right there. But then again, if I'm facing real Confederate forces, I may not want to do that. It may be easier for me to cross where it's not opposed and try to force a way through without taking the enhanced losses that I'm going to take from, first of all, attacking in terrain that's good and all that crap. So that pushes us to another turn there. Do I want to do another one? Yeah, let's do another turn and then we'll load this up. Some excitement going on. Butler trying to outflank Confederate position and make things difficult. We're going to force them to just keep falling back. Likewise, I'm building a bunch of corridor bridges. No pontoons were ready to be deployed where they were really useful. But little do I know, rain is coming next turn. That's going to sweep them all away and screw everything up. However, we do have an attack coming across, and this isn't the nasty terrain, isn't it? This is like rough terrain at Fair Oaks, but I know there's only one unit there. It's not entrenched. I think I can probably bust it out of there. We'll see. It turns out that Hancock may be being a little too aggressive. Of course, he gets to dig in and be on the other side of the river because he's superior leadership. He's not facing anything, but there's some artillery there in Heath, which is fairly potent with the rough terrain that doubles the Confederates. The river crossing halves the Union, so it's 18.5 to 20. That's not pleasant. So that starts me out at 1 to 2. There's a shift against because there's a bloody swamp there. I couldn't bring my artillery with me. Let's leave them back. Okay, so that's not 18.5. That's 12, 20, 29, 27, 13.5 to 20. Still 1 to 2 to begin with. A shift against, because it's defensible terrain, puts it to 1 to 3. It's an assault versus a stand, which puts us to 2. The Union takes 1 hit. Okay, that's not good to begin with. But now it's 13.5 on an assault to 20 on a stand. So it's like this. We both shift over there to the 15 column. The Union does not do well. They do maybe a hit. The Confederates do a hit. Let's give the Confederates their point of damage first, and then let's see if the Union gets a hit. They do as well, which may be a big deal because Heath has taken significant damage. Not enough that it's a problem. So I don't have to take hits on the artillery. I want to bring the artillery with me. Not because the reason is because, no, I didn't know I'm going to survive. What I don't want to do is withdraw the artillery and leave guns behind. So I do want to leave the artillery behind. But I did lodge my way in there. And rough terrain, what's the troop density? I'm not going anywhere with that. Let's perform no attacks. We did a quick force march to try to block this off. That's not optimal, but it's what we had. The Union could try to force march up there, whatever. Getting out of here would require an attack or an army retreat, which would require that I pull everybody back towards Richmond, which obviously I can't do anymore. I've got to hold this line and shift my forces as I'm capable of. Make attacks where, maybe an attack like here makes sense to free units up. But, geez, I really hate taking the offensive right now in any sense, even localized. You can tell how I am so much not a mobile defense person. But this would be valuable, but then I have another unit there, and I think I'm going to be able to get away with this next turn if I'm lucky, whatever. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, we're falling into a little ball, trying to defend Richmond as best as we can. And if if we end up digging in, well, I mean, it could be that we give up a lot of victory points because the Union's able to come next to Richmond. I don't see how I'm going to stop them here if there's real infantry coming. Because this bridge is a defect, right? You know, even if I destroy the bridge or whatever, which I'm wondering why that didn't happen. Oh, because I destroyed this bridge. Okay. Even if I destroy the bridge, I'm still going to have trouble. You know, I still have to cover this space because the engineers could throw a pontoon bridge across at any point, and just attack. Of course, there's nobody there right now, so it's not a big deal right this moment. But otherwise, I'd have to protect these two spaces instead of these two. That would keep me further away. But if there's a Union infantry corps coming, you know, if I shift up here, maybe it comes down. Maybe this guy comes over, whatever. I don't know what's what. How many corps do they have? Well, that's a good question. 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 6 corps. This is 1. 2, 3, 4, 5. There's one that's unaccounted for, basically. Now, I can't be sure that these are full corps here, but my best guess is there's something up here that's a corps, and that's scary, you know. It's probably here. It's there. Okay. We're going to load this up because it's over an hour, and yeah, we're having some fun. And I'm going to move this here because this is going to be a rain turn coming up. All right, let's send it up. By the way, I am much, much happier with this than I am with the Autumn of Glory patch that this same magazine issue came up with. I think there could have been a good scenario in that. But where they started, what they did, you know, with it, it was basically, maybe because of misunderstanding or poorly written rules or whatever, but it was basically unwinnable by the Confederates, and there was no way it was going to come up with the historical thing. You weren't going to see a McPherson's Ridge or anything like that happening. So, you know, the Confederates wanted to pull out, and yeah, there wasn't really any reason for them to stay, as far as I could tell. Maybe I completely misunderstood it, but it seemed like a horrible scenario to me. This one captures the movement feel, even though this is like the most entrenched part of the war. This really captures that sort of mobile operations, you know, being able to outflank, etc. And historically, you know, Grant had to go around. He couldn't just bust his way to Richmond. I'm thinking I got a shot at it here. But again, I'm bloody minded. All right, let's send it up.